Welcome to the Reality Revolution. Today is a wonderful day. We got 2020 back, and we're going to dive deep on Neville Goddard and really explore some of these new metaphysical ideas I've been exploring in the Neville literature. If anybody wants to, I recommend you watch our first interview because I may not repeat a lot of those same questions. In the first interview, I had just kind of started reading some of the Neville lectures, and I had reached out to 2020 to get a better idea and understanding of Neville Goddard. And so since I had that interview, I've gone over maybe 60 more lectures and books. And so there's a lot more that I've learned in the process. And of course, I wanted to reach out and so this is more of an advanced course that we're going to be talking about Neville Goddard. And we're probably going to go into some other things, but welcome to the Real Revolution. So glad to have you back, 20. How's it going?
Brian, I am just awesome, man. You know, it's a little cold here in Australia this morning, as we were just chatting about. It's cool because, like, you guys are heading into summer and we're heading into winter, and it's almost like, you know, like everything in life has both spiritual and physical components to it.
True.
And it's just, for me, this is just a lovely reminder because, like, I'm sitting here almost shivering. It's so cold where I'm sitting at today. And you're probably heading into sweat weather. And it's like, but it's all the same earth. It's all the same consciousness. And it's just awesome. So,
it has to be unusual because you grew up in the United States. So there's a part of your body that's used to this being a hotter time. You get used to that rhythm of the summer being in the summer months, right?
I would suspect so. I still find it odd, like, we literally have Christmas in July in my mind here because it's Christmas time, you're sweating. Christmas time, you're wearing shorts, you put on sunscreen, and
right.
Christmas time in the old country, you got frostbite.
Right.
So,
well, the first time we talked a little bit about some of Neville's lectures, and we kind of discussed some of this stuff about the law. And since then, there was about 4 or 5 books that came out on Kindle that had some new lectures. And there's been some new lectures I had not seen on the Free Neville site that kind of came out of the blue with these Kindle lectures. And so I kept on reading those and my understanding. And the more I started reading the Neville lectures, I could see that there was 2 Nevilles. You could see the definite separation. There's the Neville from 39 to, say, 56, and then there's the Neville from then on. And clearly he loved talking about the law. And for people that haven't read Neville Goddard, he taught that imagination creates reality. He taught the law of assumption. Wonderful metaphysical teacher that had a way of interpreting the Bible that was amazing. But in the later literature, he's really focused on this idea of the promise. So yes. I wanted to talk about that and then some other stuff as we go along. So tell me first of all, let's talk about a little bit what your feeling and understanding of the promise is and how you've integrated it in as you applied Neville Goddard into your life. Give me your understanding and feeling of the promise so I can better understand it.
Cool. So it's really wild because I got back into Neville Goddard because the experiences of the promise started happening in my life in my late 20s, I believe.
Oh, wow.
So talk about a weird way to approach this stuff, because the first time I came across Neville, I was about 12 years old, and I used to buy books at this little used bookstore. So I went in and picked out a whole bunch of books, and I'm reading through them on the way home. One of them was a Neville book, and it had too much scripture in it. I was raised Catholic. I was rebelling against all that. And so I pitched it in the bin. It's like, okay, I got a few good things, but I gave it a pitch. The second time I came across Neville was after I was in the riots in 1989. My wife at the time and I joined Amway, and my upline, among other things, gave me a Neville book. Mm-hmm. And I looked through and it's like, oh yeah, I remember this guy, and just read through, gave it back, no big deal. Mm-hmm. But the third time I came back to Neville was because I'd gone through the whole PTSD thing. I was doing research in alternative religions, consciousness, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And Neville came to mind because here was a guy that experienced waking up, and he didn't say, this is a big deal. He didn't say, I'm a guru and you're not. He didn't say, I'm
Mhm.
one with God and you're not. He basically said, here are a definite series of experiences that you will go through as you wake up in one form or another. You'll have these kinds of experiences
Right.
as you wake up and realize your awareness of being is God and consciousness is the only reality.
Right.
So it was cool for me because Neville totally left my mind. I got into Napoleon Hill and everything else as far as like how to rebuild my life. But
Right.
whenever my quest became truth, I mean, I was just tortured with the PTSD side of the coin. And it's like, I just want to know the truth. I want to know the truth about us. I just dedicated my life to truth. I meditated a lot and just wanted to know who and what we are and how this works. And
Mhm.
that's how I got back with Neville. So, God, the promise, I can really understand why uh, some people say Neville went off the rails after he fully
Right.
experienced the promise, because it's like the law is fun. I mean, I love the law.
Right.
I mean, the fact that I can give life to the lovely if I want a car, if I want to
Mhm.
imagine lovingly for a neighbor.
Right.
But honest to God, getting who you truly are, uh,
Yeah.
is there anything better to explore, to experience, to share?
So his idea is these bizarre visuals that he says you will have, these
Yes,
dreamlike visions. You're holding a baby
yes,
that is essentially you,
yeah,
or in future version of you, maybe. Uh, David comes to you and says, "You're my father."
yes,
A dove comes down and kisses you. Uh,
yes,
so you've had these visions as well. You've had these
yes.
visions. So he implies that once you have these visions, that your life's going to be coming to an end soon. A lot of those lectures, he's implied, well, I know my time's coming to an end because I've had the full vision, and I'm just here waiting, kind of like he's just looking at his clock, going, "Oh, I know now that it's done." That there's an implication for that, but he also implies that he had his visions in 1939. So I'm confused about that. So is there, and that was Kate Jeggedy also mentioned that there is a time frame. Once you've had the full vision, that you know your time's coming. So so some people that have asked me about it and had said, I haven't had the vision yet. Well, maybe that he's implying it happens later in life. So is there a time frame or some kind of indication from his stuff that once you're having these visions that, oops, time's coming for you to go to the next garment or level, as he would say, right?
It's really cool when I look at what, you know how Neville shares how your desires are divine in origin.
Right.
God speaks to man through the basis of his basic desires. And it's interesting to me because I get, as I've read through Neville's lectures in that context, he was done. He just,
Yeah.
he had kids, he had,
Right.
the experience of wealth in different ways. And he was just, to me, it was almost like he was no longer interested
Right.
in the ways of this world.
He was like, okay, he just looking at his clock. He still loved his wife, and he
Yes,
knew it was very urgent for him to continue teaching.
yes,
Right. So
yep,
he's like,
yeah, that was it.
I guess I'm supposed to continue teaching, kind of. I'll have my martini when I get home, but that I'm just waiting. Kind of, am I right in that impression that I get? Is that kind of like
What I get when I read Neville's experience, definitely. It was like
right?
he just, I mean, like you said, he still loved his life. He loved
Hmm.
a wife. He loved to teach. But it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, there's not much else here I want to do. Uh, Me, on the other hand, God, I feel like I'm just getting started.
Right.
I've mentioned more than once on the show, I'd love to live to be 200 because I want to watch how the trees grow. So,
Right.
and it's not that I'm afraid of death. I have no fear of death at all.
Hmm.
But it's like, I just don't want to, I want to see the trees grow.
Right.
I want to see what we've put into place, what happens to it because of the way we live. And
Right.
I wonder how much of this, because I remember reading at one point with the promise, and Neville said, you will experience these, everyone will experience these four key elements,
Right.
and they will happen this many days apart. And it's like, okay, got it. And then I look back and I go, wow, like I wish I would have kept notes. I can sort of say that was probably roughly the timeline I went through. But then later on, I noticed there were at least one or two lectures where he said, your mileage may vary. You know,
Okay.
this may happen a little bit differently on a different timeline for you. So it's an interesting thing for me just to even notice that, because like I really do believe that there are a series of experiences where you have the realizations, like the one where he talks about I'll just call it like the lightning bolt, you know,
Right.
coming down
Coming
and
down through his body and
yeah,
separating him
to-
in
totally.
two, right?
Totally. Yep. Now, when that happened to me, it's funny because that's what got me back to Neville. Because when that happened to me, I remember I was in this little bed. My wife and I slept separately. She was in the front of the house. I was in the rear because I had so many sleep problems.
Hmm.
And so I was in my little tiny bed. It was like a little super single bed or something like that. And it was in the back room. And I'd just been like laying in bed experiencing the I am consciousness,
Right.
just experiencing being what's breathing, being what's aware, being what,
Right.
and then all of a sudden there was this right. And I remembered right after that reading something Neville wrote. Again, this had been 5 years since I picked up a Neville book, but I remember him saying something like he was afraid he was going to die or he was having a stroke, and like the shake was very literal, you know, the
Right.
experience of it. And that's what I was going through. So it's like,
Right.
oh yeah, this Neville guy, I got to look this Neville guy back up.
Right.
because I looked online and everyone's talking different other things and like how special it is, and it's like, oh no, it's this is for everyone. It's a demarcation point, but it'll happen to everyone. So
So yeah, he does say that it is individualized, and there is an implication that everybody's is going to be a little bit different, maybe because we
yes.
all are experiencing everything differently. Because I've had visions of the dove, but it was like it was like a techno thing almost, like
I would believe that
you
with
know,
you.
it was a techno. It felt like I was like there was it was like a dance thing going on. Like I could the dove came out, it was part of a rhythm of a musical thing, and I was like, I don't think that's how I imagined that experience. So is his implication that he does say in a question and answer session that you're moving up to a new body, you're going to
Sure.
have a new body, and you're preparing for the new age, and we're in kind of a hell right now going through this process to help it expands our knowledge and understanding of everything, going through all these experiences, but that's just we're in hell essentially is what he's implying, and we go through the hell on purpose. Am I right? And is that a understanding of that?
It's interesting, like the word hell, because again, from what I gather from his work and my experience both,
Right.
none of this was punishment.
No.
It was the furnaces of affliction.
Right.
And when you dive into that, it's not like, you know, I'm doing this to punish myself or something. It's like, oh no. This is about purification. This is about letting go of the
Right.
secondary cause, the false god, the concepts that separate us, quote unquote.
Hmm.
As we let go of those through the furnaces of affliction, we realize, oh my God, awareness of being is God.
Right. Now he makes the implication that essentially God is asleep inside of our skull,
Inside the
in
skull,
the
yes.
yod, he calls it, in the back of our
Yep,
skull.
yep,
Right.
yep, yep, yep,
And
yep.
so we're awakening, and a lot of different religions talk about the back of the skull as a point of awakening, as chakra points. But so there's
Totally.
an Elohim that's asleep, is what he's saying,
I would
and
agree.
and it's awakening in our skull. Is it? It's
Yes.
nothing to do with our heart. Is attached? Is it? It's just it. I'm trying to understand that. So
Wouldn't it be nice?
yeah,
I,
wouldn't it be nice if it gets happened?
yeah, I love for me, because this is so experiential,
Yes, it
and
is.
just and trying to find the words. It's the pursuit of the expression. I really understand why Rumi wrote in poetry,
Yes.
because it's almost, you're trying to talk about it in prose is almost impossible, but getting like literally that it is like there is a rock in the back of the head, you know, sealing the tomb, and when that energy comes up and it slams against it, holy shit, man.
Uh-huh.
It's not like, oh, I'm imagining a serpent and a rock. No. It's
Right.
explosive, and it's like, wow. like, wait, why did we design ourselves this way? Talk about a cosmic joke. It's fascinating because
Talk about a cosmic joke. Right.
we've got like the sacrum, the sacred bone.
Right.
And the thing goes down to the sacrum and back up and slams into the occiput, and then that's rolled away. And like, I remember I shook like, probably no lie, I probably shook like I had Parkinson's for 2 years.
After that, really?
Yeah, I could settle it down, but if I relaxed just a little tiny bit, it would just.
You think it's more energy? You think that you would access? Okay, I get this impression that we're in this path to a more advanced consciousness. Right
Sure.
now, we're kind of in a limited consciousness. We see with our eye, we smell, we can hear, but it's kind of limited. So we're kind of getting prepared for something that's much, much greater. And that is the beginning of it. Like, we're giving birth to this new thing in our consciousness. Maybe I'm wrong. That's how I'm understanding it. Please tell me I'm wrong if I am. Am
I find it's all an adventure.
It is an adventure. Yeah.
Like in some ways, maybe it's advancement.
Right.
It's also quite the adventure, because just discovering. I had a psych nurse. So back in the old days, I used to teach Reiki and Qigong and all that good stuff. And I had this psych nurse coming in for training in that kind of stuff for probably about 2 years. And she said to me one day, "You move as if she goes, I don't want to insult you, but I want to tell you something."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, go on. And she goes, "You move like a blind man."
Mm-hmm.
And I stopped for a second, and I told her, I find that fascinating, because I perceive from everywhere. Like, I still see from my eyes, I hear from my ears,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also like I perceive from everywhere. So I can see why it would be like that. This is stuff I don't talk about much, because some people try to make a big deal about it. It is a big deal, but it's not a big deal, because consciousness is the only reality.
Right.
So you can be conscious from everywhere. You can put attention on your big toe. You could bring attention from your big toe.
Right.
We tend to think consciousness is only up here. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my God, no. There's so many ways to explore. And once you really get, here's my little phrase: what I am is God having the adventure of a lifetime.
Right. Right.
Holy crap, man.
Yeah.
It's like, how could, I love, as soon as I tuned into the call today, you're sitting there and you're having fun. You're by yourself, and I can see you're just sitting there. You're Brian, you're having fun.
Right.
I don't understand how people can get bored.
I think that's true. I don't get that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's probably one of the things when you talk about waking up, being awake, the promise, it's like, I don't get Neville got bored.
No.
I get he was done living
He's
this
ready
life
to go to
here.
the next step.
Yes, but I don't get that he ever was bored. I mean, could you imagine? Hey, Neville, how you going? Bored. It's really.
Right.
I mean, the guy.
I don't see that.
Yeah, I don't see that at all. So it's like, go ahead. This is
no. So I want to talk about this next concept, which is the Elohim. Now, he mentions it several times when he says that the concept of God, when people first start reading the basic Neville lectures on imagination, is there's one God, and we're all just going to dissolve into this one God. But then he starts going into a little more detail. The Elohim is plural. The God is the definition of God. Didn't say that there was one God, that there's gods in one of his interpretations, and that we are the Elohim, a group of gods, a divine assembly of gods. How have you interpreted that as you've studied and understood? Because I see the Elohim mentioned in Theosophy. It's mentioned in ancient textbooks. The word keeps on coming up in channeled works. And so as soon as I hear that word, I'm attaching it to Neville, and I want to know more, because he's saying it too. And it's a loaded word a little bit. What is your interpretation or understanding of that as you've started through this process of researching Neville?
Wow. We didn't dive into.
I promised we would
today.
go to the next level. So yeah.
In the Dream Driven Day program, one of the lessons explores that there's only one ocean.
Right.
and we label the ocean with, as if there's 7 oceans, and then we have all these seas that come off the oceans and all that stuff.
Right.
And it's true, because we do have 7 oceans, but we really only have one. We have one ocean with all these waves in it, but the waves are seemingly separate, yet they are individualized.
Right.
It seems to me like we have this language based in duality.
Yes.
Subject, verb, predicate,
Right.
for as far as English goes. But it's and that seems to dictate our entire thinking process. But it's like, to me, it's like, it's true. We have subject, predicate, verb. We do have, like, my dog's here licking the seat that I'm on. I have no idea why, so I'm petting him. So
Right.
there's seemingly me and my dog,
Mm-hmm.
and me and you, but there's also just this one field that we share.
Right.
And God, words, it brings us back to the whole pursuit.
Right. The words
thing.
are a hard thing about this, is the words make it very difficult to define some of these concepts. Now, my first concern and question, I guess concern, so then we're just going to meld into this mass group consciousness, and we're just going to be one of a trillion souls. But he does say in a lecture, we continually become individualized more and more every
exactly.
So,
Yes.
So everybody is becoming individualized more and more, at the same time as everybody being a part of the quantum whole, correct?
I suspect it's sort of like, remember when you and I are about the same age, I think.
Right, yeah.
Remember VHS videos?
I do.
Oh my God, they were the best, weren't they?
They were awesome.
And then suddenly DVDs came out.
Right.
And as soon as you looked at a VHS video, it's like, oh my God, that's horrible.
Right.
And now my friend Cube and I were talking about this today with these new big screen TV things. Like, we've got this 65-inch television. You can't watch a DVD on it because it's grainy. You have to watch a Blu-ray thing. And then he tells me there's this advanced Blu-ray thing. So it's almost, I love how technology mirrors reality.
Yes, I do.
Because we, I know it. I can tell. I sense your enthusiasm all the time. Because it's like, they say, the amount of data is doubling, computer processing doubles at this rate, and all this crap, and it's just a reflection of us.
True.
As we become more refined and defined and aware of our unity and our individuality.
At the same time.
At the same time.
It's not a duality. They can both exist. We can be more individualized within a unity, is what I'm trying to perceive. Yes.
It feels to me like it's the opposite ends of a bowstring. Like, if we're really exploring this stuff, you have these seemingly opposites that give life to the tension of the bowstring.
Okay.
But if we just have, it's all unity, it's all separateness, I mean, you just got a flaccid piece of rope. But if you have this experience, and with a bowstring, there's always a twist, right? You're twisting. So there's this that to me is part of the pursuit. It's this dance of there's definite masculine and definite feminine in the world.
Right, absolutely.
But when the two come together, the sensual, sexual, the dance.
Right.
Oh my God, there's the thing. So to me, it's all the same different fractals, because it's like, is there a unity? Yes. Is there an individuality? Yes. And as we become aware of one, the other as well. And it's just like the bowstring just gets,
Right. I love that. That's great. So, all right, let's go to it. Let's get deeper here. So when Neville talks about the afterlife, he does not, he says there is not reincarnation.
Correct.
He gives this idea that we when we die, we never know we die. We just wake up in a 20-year-old body.
Yep.
I have found, interestingly, I found this explanation of the afterlife with Swedenborg. Swedenborg is mentioned by William Blake. William Blake, who's a big, obviously Neville loves William Blake, and Swedenborg, I guess, was given the opportunity to visit the afterlife and angels, and explained, you wake up in a 20-year-old body. So what does that mean? Does that mean I wake up in a matrix? He says it's not. So I'm in a kind of a holographic existence where I am the only one, but I'm 20 and I'm still learning my spiritual lessons. Or do I get planted in some other timeline? Because he also has some lectures where he implies, oh, it might not be sequential. You might end up in the year 600. You might be in the year 3000, right? So is it a matrix of that? Because if we're coming back, that's reincarnation. Or does the 20-year-old body in my comic book mind just appear like Nightcrawler, and then we have a life that's been magically appears in that time frame, or because we don't grow up. Please help me understand 2020, please.
I have no clue, but I do love this, right? I love that whenever you look at all these movies in Hollywood, you ever notice when grandma dies and grandma goes to heaven, grandma is suddenly in her 20s.
Right.
Yeah. I find comic book people and Hollywood people are so aware of so much, but they don't necessarily know they're aware of so much.
Right.
And it's fascinating to me. Yeah, it's true, because it's like grandma dies, now she's 20 in heaven. It's like,
but that's
how do they know?
Heaven, so we're not going to heaven, right?
Right.
We're going. We're still learning spiritual lessons. We still.
Yep. Whatever that next thing is, suddenly you're 20 again.
Suddenly we're 20 again.
And you don't realize that you just popped in.
Right.
So apparently you've got some sort of constructed history.
But it gets even more complicated, because Neville then says, oh, I met this guy and I said, yeah, you were dead. I remember when you were, well, okay, what the F? All right. So he's saying that we're not reincarnating, but in this density existence reality, he sees somebody that he remembers. And maybe because he's awakened, he knows, he doesn't imply. How did he know that guy had been dead? What was he talking about there? Can you please help me, Tony?
If it's the story I'm thinking of, are you talking about the one with Jack Butler, his secretary?
Jack,
right. Right.
So Jack, you used to be dead, and Jack doesn't believe him.
Yeah, right? I buried you, Jack.
Right.
And I think in one of the references, Jack actually, he has a realization moment.
He has a realization. So are there people walking around amongst us right now that are dead but don't know it, that could awaken to it? Please tell me.
I can tell you this. I have watched people in workshops when literally when a miracle happens, and they'll notice it, and then they'll gradually forget it.
Right.
And I find it fascinating, because we've got this capacity to ignore the miraculous, to ignore some very massive truths. And it's, I'm curious about, obviously right now, my reality is with you.
Right. We're in the same reality, I think. At least we're able to Zoom, right?
Yes. At the same time, I'm also aware of other things. Right. Like taking a walk in my own hometown. It doesn't feel like I'm walking there as a memory. It feels like I'm there right now.
Right.
I just find this whole thing, the pursuit of, I think my problem or opportunity is, I really don't care about the answers. I'm so curious about the experiences.
I get that. Right.
And
I'm obviously the opposite. I want the answers.
I love that you and I can dance like this. Right. By the way, I have gotten so many compliments from our first interview. And I know
it was a great interview. Yeah.
And
one of my most popular on the channel.
I know I sent you a couple like, hey dude, yeah, just heard this, or I tell people, go tell him too. But it's like, wow. Yeah. How cool is it that, quote unquote. So remember that whole, that in a way, that's also you and me.
Right. Yeah. That's
oh my God. And the juice that shows up, because you're like a pit bull and a pork chop, going for answers. and I love it. Yeah. And me, I'm just going, fuck it, man. Like,
right.
Yeah. While I'm talking to Brian, I can feel myself walking in my old hometown. There's a couple other things. It's like, how this all works. Is it a multiverse? Is it, I don't know.
Right.
All I know is the more we play and talk about it, and the more cool questions people come up with, the better their adventures get.
I think he's implying that on some level, it's sort of a multiverse, that our imagination is the multiverse, right? And then that we can literally out of body travel astrally to another universe where this thing that we want, and then we give birth to it like a sperm. And as long as we're living in it, then it becomes, we give birth to it. And he implies it's like there's no walls. You kind of, I don't know. That's one. He does imply in Out of This World a sort of idea similar to parallel realities. That's one of the reasons I was so interested in Neville, because there it is. Oh man, the old classic.
It's an old one. And
what is amazing about Neville is that he could write 20 pages and it would seem like a book. He was very, hey, I've written a book, you've written a book, you know how it goes. It's time consuming. Could you imagine just writing 20 pages and then it's like, his books are just perfect, and nobody ever was like, oh, it's just a pamphlet. No, these are hardcover books that he would create that are just in some of his books, like at his command, he says, yeah, I could have made this a lot longer. But it doesn't make sense.
But what would the point be?
What would the point be, right?
Yes.
That's what was amazing about his writing, was he would take the simple things and do it in those books. But it does feel like there's sort of a multiverse concept going on there. I don't know, that it does feel like that. That's why at least I started getting interested in, because people that explore parallel universes are using the same techniques as Neville Goddard. And more, he made it very easy to understand. His techniques were much more simple and taking out some of the science of it. At least that was my experience with it. Yeah.
Seems to me that we simultaneously, my experience is like while we're talking, I'm aware of walking in my old hometown. So it's not like I leave here to go do it. It's simultaneous. Are you familiar with David Hawkins' level of consciousness chart?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Cool. It occurred to me one day that all of those are available at once.
At once, yes.
And what we tend to do as humans is filter out, okay, I'm experiencing the level of love or the level of anger. But they're all there all the time.
Right. That's true. That there's an implication that you're only at level 1000, but no, you can be, there's a level 1000 mixed in with the level 700 and 800. I agree with that conception. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. So one thing I didn't get to talk to you about before that I'm interested in about your story, that you had this part of your experience was this prison riot, and it created this PTSD, so tell me more about this story. I didn't get a chance to really delve into that because it was a big pinnacle moment that changed your life, right?
Totally.
So yeah, I'm sorry I didn't ask you about that before, but it's very interesting, and I want to maybe share that story with us a little bit, and how what your experience and what you learned, because you dealt with PTSD first.
Oh my God, yeah.
Right, and I know that because I have been shot at, and I have experienced mild, nothing probably like yours, PTSD, and it also ended up being a catalyst for me, a spiritual catalyst. So tell me a little more about that.
Wow. So when I was 23 years old, I found myself working for the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections.
And sorry about that.
So am I, but it was good fun, right? It was all perfect, man. So I'm 4 months in on the job, and we had a 3-day prison riot, and I was taken hostage on the second day. Oh, wow. Right. So now here's some of the cool things, right? So when I was a little boy, I kept having these dreams about being in a red brick city, a city with all these red brick buildings that was on fire. Right. And so sure as shit, whenever, the riot kicked, I realized, oh my God, I'm in this red brick city. Right. It was like 44 acres or something like that. And it's burning. Right. And so there was that imaginal act as a child that came true in my 20s, right? So there were, I don't know, half a dozen of us taken hostage that night. And I got tied up, got the shit kicked out of me, literally died and came back to life. And the cool thing with that is, and I've people, I used to have them all the time wanting to hear about it, but I don't talk about it much anymore. But what's really cool with that, on that side of the coin, I remember, like leaving my body, the tunnel of light, all that good stuff. But I also remember at one point imagining being alive again.
Wow.
And it was like, literally, that's when, back in the body I go, oh, this fucking hurts. This place stinks. What's that smell? Oh, that shit in my pants. I mean, it was just like, it was like, all right, this is, full on, man. So for me, it was one of the most fascinating experiences, because I walked out of there the following morning, whenever the state police came in and rescued everyone. I walked out with the coolest experience of my life, discovering that we don't die, and also, quote unquote, the worst experience of my life, getting killed, the shit kicked out of me, being taken hostage, and so on and so forth. So it's like the ultimate mind scramble, because it's like, here's the truth about us, and here's also all the hell that I gave life to. And God, I couldn't have planned anything better, because that was literally what I needed to have some time off, to sit back and go through the furnaces of affliction that I had to go through. Because when I was a young guy, I wanted I wanted to become a police officer. And so I put myself through the police academy, and I discovered that it's really hard to get a job if you don't know someone, if you're white, and if you don't have military. And oh my God, I got this chip on my shoulder, right? Because it's like, if I was Latino or Black, I could get a job, or if I had military, I could get a job. And eventually I got a cop job. That was fun. And eventually I had 3 cop jobs, part-time, 3 departments. And that's when I went to the Department of Corrections, because I'd work less, make more money, right? Make a decision. But it was interesting, because all that subtle stuff that I had in there, dealing with white versus Black, and again, it wasn't that I didn't like Blacks. I just thought the system sucks. Like, why is it that he can get a job and I can't, right? That kind of thing. All that got to get revisited on me as well in that riot, because it was literally, run, by the Blacks in the jail, the Nation of Islam, or the Fruit of Islam. So it was a fascinating thing where I got to go, right, look what I've given life to, like hatred. I've given life to separateness that doesn't have to be. I've given life to religious ideology conflicts, because the whole thing was, was based on all that. That's like, I can let all this go. I can let go of male, female. I can let go of Black, white. I can let go of religion. And all that was just the perfect stage for me to just start going, right. Which brings us back to the promise and Neville Goddard. I just want to know the truth. I just want to know the truth.
I just that.
Yeah. It's like, I've died and been reborn. I've noticed how much all this religious conflict has done to me, how much believing that the system was out to get me has done to me. I get to let all that go.
Right.
And now explore who and what we are and how it works.
So another thing I want to talk about is his concept of astral travel or out-of-body experiences. He does imply in a question and answer that we have a silver thread.
Yep.
That connects to our bodies, and that he would do it regularly. He showed people would see Neville all over the place. He showed up for his sister when her son was dying.
Yeah, the nephew. Yes.
Why didn't he save the nephew? Why didn't he imagine the nephew better? Instead of, he was helping his sister out, but he could have just helped his nephew be better. So can you explain that first?
In my world, so I got to go with me on this one.
Right, yeah.
Death isn't the enemy.
It's not. So he wasn't worried about it. It wasn't a bad thing. Okay.
No. And it makes sense given what else we were talking about, because if the nephew's just going to, plop into another slice of time.
Right. And he does say that, yeah.
So it's as much as I remember when my grandma was dying, and I didn't imagine her living longer. I imagined her living peacefully.
Right.
and I was told like 3 hours after I talked to her on the phone, she died.
Right.
And it's like, cool. You know, grandma's on her next. Yeah, she's able to do the jig again. How
Right.
cool is that?
But so have you explored these out of body experience or astral techniques, and what's your
Totally.
perspective of it?
God, you know, it's why I never get bored. I got deep into Bob Monroe decades ago. That was good fun. There's whether we're traveling from here to another point on Earth, or another slice of time, or another size. There's so many games you can play. I think to me the whole thing is, in this experience, my body's like the anchor point.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, like the bones are the densest part of my body. The flesh around it, the aura around that is less and less dense, but it's all real. So I tend to keep returning to this while it's functional.
Right.
But meanwhile, oh my God, Brian, it just, I honestly, I experience in belief, since consciousness is the only reality, that the only thing that we perpetually do as humans is deny ourselves experiences.
It's true. That's a very good point. I agree with that.
You know, you want to experience what the inside of the sun's like? Go there.
Just go there.
Just go there.
All right. Well, give me some recommendations, some travel tips. Next time I travel out of my body, where should I go?
Go bigger or smaller.
Okay.
And then go here or there.
Oh, okay. Well,
if you go bigger or smaller first, like bigger, like right now, where are you on the planet?
I'm in California.
I want you to experience all of California.
Right. Okay. I've done stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Do it now.
That I got it. I can feel it.
I can feel it's
all
different.
The way to, it's different. All of California is different than Southern California, than my city, than my state, than my,
Now, some people might say you're making constructs or something. I'd say when I just want to feel Victoria, Australia, which is like a state, I can experience that, or I can experience all of Australia, or just my valley. I get that this is not something that we're making up. This is something that we're doing. Right. So at any time, I can also experience like a molecule. I'm not mucking with my language. It happens because I'm shifting sizes and trying to talk at the same time.
Right.
How many ways can we play? How small can you experience?
Yeah.
How big can you experience? How far can you experience? Oh my God.
Right.
When I go far, I feel like everything's expanding. So far for me gives me that sensation right now.
Right.
Which makes sense because of, what do they say about the universe? It's expansion. Cool.
Yeah. So from a Neville perspective, people are watching this interview. It seems, if you're watching the news, it's like a crazy time. We got protests all over the world. We have pandemic. So from a Neville perspective, how do you view this through the Neville filter, the COVID-19 and the protests that were going on? Give me your Neville filter of what's going on in the world.
Wow. Compared to where, if I would have looked at this differently many moons ago, with my background, especially with the riots I was in, holy shit, man. It's
perfect person to ask then.
I love Neville's quote on the spiral principle. When he talks about this world is operating on a circular principle, and things will repeat. Spring, summer, fall, winter. There'll be times where there's feast. There'll be times when there's famine. There will be loogies out there. There will be times where there's pretty much no loogies out there. There'll be riots. There'll be peace. There'll be wars. That stuff always just keeps happening.
Right.
It doesn't impact me a whole bunch. Like, it will impact me because I'll think of my friend Vince, who currently still works in law enforcement. and I'll just imagine lovingly for them.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll see something on the news. I don't watch much news, but it pops up on the Apple thing once in a while. And if something moves me, I'll imagine lovingly about it.
Right.
But generally, here's my thing. The state that I live in personally, it's like we live at the best time ever.
I understand that. It's a contradiction. I feel the internal contradiction, but I feel the same thing. This is my most exciting and best time I've ever lived. And,
yeah, totally. Me too.
Yeah.
I look at it and it's like, oh my God, people are waking up. Sometimes they have to go from I mentioned David Hawkins' chart. Sometimes people have to go from depressed and fearful to angry before they get to integrity. And they're just moving up. So I'm not a fan of burning anything,
right?
Not at all. But it's like, oh wow, because if I can acknowledge I'm mad, I think I'm mad at you, but I'm mad.
Right.
But as soon as I go, oh, I thought I was mad at Brian. Oh my God, now I'm in integrity. I'm not mad at Brian. I'm just upset.
Right.
And then joy gets to show up. Oh my God, I am such a goofball. Right. I got mad because he grew a mustache. Oh, it's crazy, man.
Right.
And then we can let go of that and just realize, look what I gave life to. I wouldn't talk to him because he grew a mustache. I think he was making fun of, and like all the crazy shit that we do at these quote unquote lower levels. If we just allow ourselves to freely move through, like when I'm upset, and then it's just that.
Well, your story is a great example of why these things can be a catalyst to greater spiritual growth. If you had not gone through that, and it was a race riot on some level, if you had not gone through that, you wouldn't have gone through the expansion that you went through afterwards. So it became like a match that lit the fire to where, maybe that's kind of what I see happening, because this stuff wouldn't have changed unless there had been some sort of expansion. And it's not going to come just out of the blue. There's going to be some bridge of incidents that brings us to the expansion. It's what I see happening is this, perhaps the COVID was just a bridge of incidents for imagining a better world. And it's just kind of, we're going along the path of it. I don't know, but it feels like it, maybe. So it's, as somebody, a political science major, who was a debater in college, almost went to law school, who the previous Brian, the pre-Neville Brian, would talk politics with you for hours, right? It's changed the way I see politics in so many ways. He has some some lectures where he's talking about his times where people hated their president. They would get so mad at the president, they'd scream at the mirror every morning, right? When they were, what do we see today? We see people angry at the politician over here all the time. And there seems to be a feedback loop where you're just getting mad at yourself, and it just seems to make things worse, even if you're right with your anger, and it's completely justified.
And when you realize that, you stop burning your own house down.
Yes. So
the external burning and looting of the cities is only a reflection of the internal burning and the looting.
Right. But
and as soon as you get
so hard sometimes to imagine lovingly that for somebody that you despise, it's on the outside that's so terrible, knowing that they're in a state, but still, you know what I mean? You don't like something that smells bad. And so you want to walk away. You see somebody that's just absolutely the worst, and then imagining lovingly. I'm getting better at it because I understand now. But for most, I can see why it becomes this inevitable feedback loop and with constant tough lesson to teach unless you experience it, I guess, right?
I think the biggest thing which has helped me with all this is really getting I'm not my body. I'm not my history.
Yes.
And really getting that, because if it's true for me, it's true for you.
Yes, I agree with that.
And it just makes I'm a big fan of, if somebody wants to harm me, okay, yeah, they've got another thing coming. I'll imagine lovingly, but I also will protect my interests.
Right.
And it's interesting because the quasi spiritual is, well, I'll just imagine lovingly and let him keep beating me. Well, you'll probably be dead in a few minutes, right? On the other hand, imagining lovingly and putting your hands up just might be the way that you survive, quote unquote.
Mhm.
It's like, I love that Neville taught, because some people say, well, Neville said never do anything. Well, Neville imagined teaching and he got on a stage.
Mhm.
And he taught from a state and he lived from a state. And for me, that's all of this stuff.
Mhm.
Because when I notice, oh, here I am, there's somebody there that I can imagine lovingly for, even if it's not hard when I just get, oh my God, they're not their history. They think they're their history.
Right.
They think they're their body. I
Right.
know better. I know better. I know different.
Yeah. Even
Yeah.
the worst person in the world that you see is just in
Yes.
a state.
Yep.
Right. So completely changes everything, and it's very fascinating. So why, or what can we, why can't we have a Neville Goddard movie, The Man Who Became God? I want to see it. We got to make it happen. 20 first person, we got to figure out a way. Do you understand what I'm saying? He has enough personal stories from him being a child with his parents and growing up to later on. Do you think it's that we could get a movie, a Neville Goddard movie? It's something I not enough people know about
Look,
Neville Goddard, you know?
look at you.
Yeah, but I'm wondering
Yeah.
why we need to we need to see it happen, right?
I find it cool because my Neville Goddard quote unquote public adventure began with me just giving away 221 free lectures.
Mm-hmm.
I put them in a zip file, put them on a web page, and just pumped them out there. I
Right.
had to. I
Get
had
that.
to. And I get exactly where you're coming from.
I get that. I have to do these lectures too.
I
I
have
feel.
to. I have to. Yes.
So, do you find yourself now that you've read all these? I know as a fact the answer, but you talk to Neville, don't you? You talk to Neville. Neville talks to you. Do you ever hear his voice or no?
Oh, I don't want it to sound like I'm saying I channel Neville.
I'm not saying
or
you channel.
anything like that.
I get that you're not.
They,
I don't think
they're-
I'm channeling him either. I just think that I just
talking to Neville's like talking to you.
right. I know he's me. I'm not saying I channel Neville,
Yes,
but there is
totally.
a distinct Neville state almost that I can access out. Like I know my Brian state and there's a Neville state, and I can kind of have a conversation with the
Sure.
Neville state, and it feels very real. Because I've read his lectures, I know how he talks, and so when I mess up a word, I know he's like, no, you need to go back, you need to correct that, and I just know his little idiosyncrasies. I'm wondering about that. There's something about. I'm not saying you channel. I'm not saying in any way there's a channeling, but there is a Neville personality there that you can access in your consciousness.
Totally.
I'm wondering. Yeah. Okay.
just like talking with my dead grandmother.
Right.
You're
not channeling her.
Not at all.
No. Right. No.
But at any time, I think it's in Creation Faith, Neville talks about. He implies something literally about using his mom and dad for a congratulatory conversation.
Right.
And he says they're dead, but I can still use them for that because and it's real.
That one. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's in Creation Faith. So give it a check
out for sure. Yeah.
Free Neville.com.
I love it because now I have another congratulatory conversation I can imagine in my head, because I have said, I always, what would my parents say right now? So yeah, I love that. That's great.
Yeah. Bring grandma, bring great grandma in, whatever. I mean, it's just, it's real.
It's real.
It's real. I think, I forget if it was Freedom or Power, one of those little $7 ebooks that I made up. With taking a bit of a Neville lecture and a little bit of thing there,
and you really go almost line by line. It's amazing. I recommend
pretty much,
anybody. For the Power one is amazing. I recommend anybody to read your breakdown of that lecture. It's really good.
In one of those, I mentioned it was almost like Neville was talking to me.
Right.
And it was like that. I'm just going through, and it's like I'm just sharing my bits, and it's just like you and I talking. Just like me and Victoria talking.
Now, I've had 3 lectures now where he mentioned something that is so specific to me
Right.
that it felt like he knew about me then. I've had the thought, and he was saying it in his lecture to send me a message or something. It felt too like there's just too much
personal.
Yeah, it's very personal. Like, so you wonder, was he saying it to me, or I don't know, but it felt like that to me. So
I like that you bring it up like that, because it's like when we're talking about greater individuality,
mm-hmm.
we don't die. We don't
Right.
dissolve. It's not like there's just this nameless higher power out there. No, we're the personification. The personifications don't die. They
Right.
merge. They
I think that's what's happening a lot of times with people that say they reincarnate. They're accessing a portion of consciousness of that already existed, and they individualize. They think that was me, but that's just a part of consciousness that they're accessing. Does that make sense?
totally.
Yeah. So
how many roles have we played? Neville says we get to play all the parts.
All the parts.
Oh,
but are we playing those parts in some matrix? Because he says we only live once.
Correct.
So how can we play all the roles if we only live once? Are we going to some imaginary world to live the rest of them?
So we're
not reincarnating, right? But we experience all the roles. Do we reach a point after we've lived this one time where we just get access to everything? And so we're not actually
Seems to me like we have one life that is expressed through many seeming lifetimes.
Okay. So the other one I wanted to ask to get your perspective on, I had posted an episode a while back. I had to remove it because it was copyrighted, but the Frank Carter lecture. So the Frank Carter lecture, very interesting. Frank Carter was a driver for Neville Goddard, one of his drivers. He mentions Frank in one lecture, or asks to talk to him in the question and answer session. And so I read this lecture, and Frank is talking about the end of Neville's life. And I recommend if anyone wants to read it, you can judge for yourself what that means. He tells a story about what Neville was like and how the last day of Neville's life, he picks him up. Neville's wife was in the hospital. He then goes to a last supper. Neville shares a martini with him, has a piece of bread with him. He goes, and then he tells a story that previously he had a vision of Neville dying, where all the blood goes out of him. And then he finds a passage in one interpretation of the Bible that says that Judas had died in the same way. And he calls Neville and his wife and says this dream, and Neville basically says that I'm Judas, and in scripture as the revealer of the messianic secrets. And we've talked about it on the Facebook group, when some people even heard that, even though it bothered them. It was very bothering to them about Neville. Some people obviously don't believe it, but I want to talk about it since I don't have the lecture on there. I want to get your perspective on it. I had originally heard that Neville just died of a heart attack. And then I had heard that he was just walking along on the sidewalk and died. And so it felt like a Mandela effect, like there was suddenly a change. And I started researching his death, and it was very vague. Like he died. They didn't say anything in the newspaper clipping. So what is your impression? What do you know? What do you think about the Frank Carter lecture?
Generally not a fan.
Okay.
It seems to me like Frank is really trying to make Neville special.
Like he's unique and right. And then Neville never wanted that.
Yeah, exactly. So I sort of have a little bit of a problem. Yeah, I have a problem there.
Okay.
so like, what I do find fascinating with what you just revealed was there's so many conflicting stories about Neville's death.
Right.
But we definitely know how he lived.
We definitely know how he lived. Right. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Now, a concept that's mentioned in there that I still see brought up, so we don't necessarily have to, is this fusion. He implies that Neville comes back and fuses with his wife after he's talked. His wife had said to Frank that Neville had fused with, and then I start seeing these mentions of fusion. Do you know anything about that? Nothing? Okay.
Nothing at all.
The questions have to be asked. If we're considering ourselves Neville scholars, these are questions that we should discuss and ask. But I agree with you that it's irrelevant. It's not important. And I would not evaluate Neville on something he did not say. Neville did not say this. None of the stuff in the Frank Carter lectures is Neville's words. It's Neville's words from somebody else. And you can judge with it as you will on it. But I wouldn't. I've met people, I had somebody comment there like they lost respect for Neville at that point, which is tragic because don't judge Neville on what somebody else said. Not judge him on his own words and his own writing. That's at least how I have decided to do it.
I can't possibly, I find it fascinating because the only thing we're doing is exploring who and what we are and how this works.
Right.
And we get to explore Neville's exploring.
Right.
Each other's exploring.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, how cool is that? If I don't resonate with Frank's message because he heads in a special direction, that's cool. I've done that. I'm not into it now, but it's like I'm fascinated when someone says, "Well, what E.O. Locker Jr. said pissed me off about Neville."
Right.
No, impossible.
Right.
The only way you can possibly get pissed off, quote unquote, about Neville or to lose faith in Neville is to not have faith in you. I love the quote, "Your faith in God is measured by your confidence in yourself." Sure. Neville had two versions of that. And I just love that quote because it always comes down to my faith in you, Brian, right, is measured by my confidence in me.
True. Yeah.
You're seeking the answer. I'm seeking the adventure. We're both seeking answers and adventures, but we get to dance like this,
right? Versus,
that turned me against Neville. How could that possibly be true? If you're seeking truth, you'll find truth.
Right.
And God, I really can't think of a more modern writer that shared truth more effectively than Neville.
So one idea I want to explore with you, because I think you'll disagree with me. Hey, I'm a debater. It's all good if we disagree.
Cool. Rock on, man.
So
this is
Neville.
great.
So Neville explains in several lectures, essentially giving an affirmation. I am healthy. I'm wealthy. I'm secure. Saying it repeatedly, or the woman saying in her bathtub, "Isn't it something wonderful is happening to me now?" So yes, these are repeating messages on a there's a question and answer session where he kind of says affirmations don't really work, which to me is a little bit of a contradiction, because he's saying in the other ones, well, these people were doing something akin to an affirmation. I know I've read where you've said affirmations.
Totally. I'm very opinionated.
Affirmations have changed my life and have definitely been something works because I'm just vocalizing my thought. It's a way of me concretizing a thought or a state into a word. I'm a vocal person. So I understand the problem with affirmations. I absolutely understand that if you're not into the feeling of it, and I talk about that, but I want to get your perspective, and then let's see where, if there's a place we can meet together, because he is kind of saying it, but not really. So what do you think?
So in the police academy, we learned a term called res geste, R-E-S-G-E-S-T-A-E. It's Latin for spontaneous utterance.
Okay.
And so when I notice when Neville shares those, like with the lullaby method, he says to enter into the feeling of your wish fulfilled, and then quietly say to yourself, "Isn't it wonderful?"
Right.
or whatever the phrase is. But it's the words coming from the feeling.
The feeling is the key secret behind the affirmation, right? Yeah.
Yes.
But for me, an affirmation creates a feeling. So that's why it works for me, because I may not be able to get that feeling without using the words to do it. No?
I'm going to guess based on your hand movements that they show up at the same time. That you're feeling that for you, because you've got a fast auditory tract, my friend.
I do.
I mean, you certainly do.
I do.
Right?
I've had to slow it down.
And so you're the guy okay, it's like, so as a police officer, sometimes you roll
Right.
up on the scene and they say nothing.
Right.
Sometimes you roll up on the scene and they say, I didn't mean to fucking kill him. Right.
Right.
It just comes right out. Right.
Right.
For you, auditory just comes right out.
True.
It's what makes you a great debater.
Right.
It's what would have made you a great attorney. So for you, as soon as the feeling is there with the words, the feeling is there with the words.
Connection.
Yes.
Me. Exactly.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Compared to the bad first date where the guy's trying to talk the girl into, yeah, I'm so great. Like, fuck. Versus, oh my God, this is great.
Right.
Yeah, that is real. Versus, girls like to date me because I'm great. It's like,
Right.
Which is how I notice most people do affirmations. But if if it's an utterance, that utterance of I'm finding the feeling, and there, so the feeling drives the words.
Ultimately, the words are irrelevant.
Totally. You could use the word gloop.
Right.
Gloop.
I could just say gloop. Right.
Gloop.
Exactly.
But
I wouldn't be able, in many cases, to create the exact state feeling without the words. And I wouldn't be able to maintain it without repetition of those words for me. You're saying that's not true.
I bet you could.
Maybe. I've tried.
So we get to find out.
Yeah, that's true.
By the way, I used to do affirmations.
Mm-hmm.
And then I discovered that the good ones were always utterances.
True. But I've also found that there is a subconscious portion of my consciousness that is stingy with things. And I need to batter it over the head over and over until it agrees with me. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not in a state of wealth. I'm constantly thinking poverty thoughts. And so I'm going to sit here and state wealth affirmations to myself enough, even while I'm sleeping, or if I do it through dual ears, so that the old hypnotic technique we use in NLP, right, where one person talks in one ear, one person talks in one ear, one's going to go into that subconscious. So I don't know. I agree with you that affirmations can be bad or irrelevant, but you're saying they're irrelevant, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And I used to love them.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I do understand your perspective, and we agree to disagree somewhat. Mostly agree. We're
totally.
most of what we're saying, we're agreeing. Yeah.
I'm curious. For me, one of the cool things is that constant evolving of an understanding.
Yes.
So what happens when we get together in 6 months?
That's a good question.
Oh my God, there's the fun.
That's going to be fun. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. So it's like, yeah. I find very few things need to be dogmatic. Like consciousness is the only reality. I found no exceptions to that.
No
Awareness
exceptions.
of being is God, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm God having the adventure of a lifetime. Those are the things which I don't think I'll ever drop.
Right.
But on the other hand, oh my God, the bits that come off of them continuously get to be refined.
Right. I agree with that. Now, you make a good point, because one mistake people make is that they treat the Neville Goddard literature like a closed system. Neville was constantly learning, like, give me your letters.
Totally.
Give me your techniques.
Totally.
He wasn't. If you got a technique, he's going to tell everybody about it, and then
do as my friend does.
Right. So
yes,
we're not stuck in 1972. Since then, people have new techniques, new dreams, new situations. So we don't want to be stuck in this closed system where we're only using the techniques that Neville used during his lifetime. It should be a constant expansion of new stuff that we're learning and then applying, experimenting with. Right.
It's like how I made up the coffee game. Mm-hmm. I had one person bash me in a group saying, "Oh, you made that up," and it's like, yeah, I did. Because if you can experience one sip of coffee as a married woman, you will be married.
Yes.
If you can experience one sip of coffee as a successful podcaster, you will be.
Right.
But if you're sipping that coffee scared shitless that you're going to die an old maid and never be a good podcaster, yeah, there's your coffee. But it's not the coffee.
It's not the coffee, it's not the words, but those things help. the coffee. It helps.
It's all little anchors.
Right. It's all little anchors. And the anchors from your experience in NLP is still, Neville was also dealing with anchors in many ways, some of his stuff. But so I'm sure as soon as we're done with this, I'm going to remember like 10 more questions that I forgot to ask you. And so I probably already did, but.
And then we'll do it again.
And then we'll do it again. But I'm finding it, the most bizarre is there is just all these lectures that are still popping up. Freedom Berry we found an advertisement where Freedom Berry was like, yeah, I got a bunch of lectures on tape if somebody wants to help me. And so those are like, so there may be even more lectures out there that we're not aware of. And so bring them on, so.
I'm totally with you.
Right.
It's interesting because like, I don't know if I'll ever listen to them all or read them all.
Well, somebody said they had been imagining new Neville lectures very intensely, like imagining that they were hearing some new Turns out that, so maybe that was them, right? Who knows? the bridge of incidents for that. But I recommend everybody check out Free Neville. You can get 220 or more free Neville Goddard lectures on a beautiful website. Check out all of 2020's books. He's got some books that go beyond just the Neville Goddard stuff, and they're fantastic. He's a great writer. He breaks down the Neville stuff. And also manifestingmastery.com is a course.
Manifestingmasterycourse.com.
Manifestingmasterycourse.com. And that is a course that you offer a step-by-step on manifesting using these techniques, right?
Yep. 90 days, special members only email, lesson every day, really good stuff.
That sounds fantastic. I might have to, if I had time, I might have to take you up on that. So,
you know what I love about you? You never sleep.
I do. Everybody says that. I sleep 8 hours a day. So.
All right.
But I have imagined a world where I get everything done quickly. So.
Yes.
But so in 6 months, I'll be shaking your hand, right? So we're gonna. That's what we said. 6 months. I'll see you, and maybe we'll visit, and we'll do the next interview. Maybe we'll do it in person if we can. So.
That'd be lovely, Brian.
All right. Thank you for coming on. And I'm sure we'll have more questions, but thank you so much for the time that we spent, and welcome to the Reality Revolution 20.
Oh, thank you, my friend. Have a lovely day, Brian.
Thank you. Well, welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm just really excited today because this is the first day that my book is released. This is it, the Reality Revolution. Worked on this for a very long time. So many of the things that I discovered along the way, and I was excited to share it with everybody. Tell you a little bit about it. I'm like everybody else. I'm interacting in the world and starting to realize that my thoughts created reality. As I did this, I started to see some major shifts in my reality. I started to explore the idea of maneuvering through parallel realities. I'm your host, Brian Scott.